Well, what's going on, YouTube? RDAP Dan here, Federal Prison Time Consulting. Hope you guys are all having an amazing Monday. We have Tom Root with us once again. He doesn't even really need any type of a introduction at this point. Tom, how are you doing today, my man?
Oh, I'm wonderful. It's warm. It's cloudy, but it's warm. So this is Ohio, so that's great.
South Florida. I don't know what the cold is any longer. I kind of forgot what it feels like to be cold. Well, today, guys, and Tom, you can hear me okay, correct?
Sure can.
Okay. So today we're going to be talking about, COVID-19 compassionate release, which has always been a big topic on here. But Tom and I have been receiving a lot of calls lately, and individuals are very interested in, is it too late? As the window of opportunity closed? So I thought to get Tom on the horn here and thought we could do a video update to kind of give you all what you can expect in the future or over the next few months. So, Tom, where do you think we should jump off and kind of kick into this?
I don't know. I got a note today this is from Joe B. in Washington, D.C. It says, come on, man, the pandemic's, oh, that's Biden. Never mind. I did a piece on my blog this morning on the numbers and the CARES Act. First piece of news is, we only had home confinement under the CARES Act and compassionate release being as hot as it was because of the CARES Act. And the CARES Act was passed when March 30 because President Trump had declared national emergency. Now, a national emergency is declared, of course, there's a law, the National Emergencies Act, and declared under the National Emergencies Act. And the act says that when an emergency is declared, it only lasts for a year unless the president extends it. Now, the numbers aren't bad. It's like 50 national emergencies, 46 of them are still in effect. The national emergency from the Iran hostages, remember that, 1979?
Yes, well, I don't remember it. I was 1 year old, but I remember reading about it in history books.
Got married that year myself. Yeah, that was that's still in effect. But there was a danger that this was all going to go away because we were coming up on the 1 year for the national emergency. But last week, President Biden extended the national emergency, and in so doing, he talked about it still required the full capabilities and dedication of the federal government. Well, I like to think he's talking about the BOP too, although you have to admit many times we're not sure the BOP is really part of the federal government. But let's talk about where COVID-19 is in BOP right now first.
And let me know when you want me to pop the slides up, Tom.
Oh, let's start with the staff here, the staff slide.
Okay.
This is the one that has always troubled me. The BOP staff COVID cases have climbed and climbed and climbed, and you see they've leveled off at a high level. We now have an inversion where the number of inmates with COVID actually less than the number of staff. Well, that troubles me because, after all, how do cell phones get into prisons? How do drugs get into prison? Mostly it's the staff. 2 BOP staffers from Petersburg just pled guilty last week to, they're not there anymore, obviously, pled guilty in federal court to smuggling in drugs. Well, the staff has been smuggling in COVID too. And of course, the problem is COVID, you contract it, you start spreading virus, you're asymptomatic for a few days before you get sick. So if the staff's sick, the inmates are going to get sick. And that's a problem. I see it as a real negative that the staff numbers have not fallen the way the national numbers have fallen or the way the inmate numbers have fallen. As long as you have 6 staff, you have a problem. What the BOP faces is this. The BOP can control how many inmates are sick because an inmate isn't sick unless the BOP says the inmate's sick. But the only entity with more power than the BOP around the institution is the BOP union, and the BOP cannot tell correctional officers when they're sick or not. So I think the number of sick correctional officers is a much better indication of how things are at the BOP than the number of sick inmates. And I get a lot of emails from inmates saying, I just had 2 more guys get sick today. 5 guys in my unit just came up sick. You don't see those numbers being reflected in the new numbers. You see the staff numbers staying high, but show me the next slide, would you, Dan?
Sure.
Oh, deaths. Let's go to the third slide, then we'll come back to this one. Here are the inmates. The inmate numbers have been falling precipitously because the inmates are recovered. How do you know you're a recovered inmate? Well, you're recovered when the BOP says you are. BOP standard is if you go 10 days, if 10 days after you're diagnosed as having COVID, you no longer have symptoms, you are declared cured. Well, that's fine. I mean, recovered, that's the CDC standard. The trick is that the BOP does not take temperatures after you get sick. Occasionally they'll come in and they'll blast you, but you can have a lot of symptoms without having temperatures. BOP may take your temperature after 10 days and say you're cured. I'm dealing with a lot of guys who say, I'm sick as a dog, I can't get out of bed, but I'm recovered. Well, recovered to the CDC just means you can't spread it anymore. But no one seems to believe the recovered inmate numbers. I've been saying for a long time that they were phony. Last week, I think it was Vice did a piece that Vice just came out and said it, that it's phony. New York Times said it just, well, today's Monday, last Saturday, that the BOP recovered numbers don't really have a basis in fact. But you can see things have slumped. Since I did this chart, they've slumped more. We're at about 1,400 right now, sick inmates.
Well, how is that affecting? Because a lot of the staff are refusing to take the test, and it just keeps the door wide open for it to slide back in. I mean, is the only protocol for a staff to walk in the prison every day just to get, his temperature taken with the little beam on the forehead?
Yeah, well, the beam is the only test the BOP uses. And there has been a battle. Last December, Director Carvajal told the House Judiciary, the House Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security. He testified on December 2nd, and he said one problem they had was that they couldn't force the COs to take an actual nose swab test to determine whether they had COVID. Ironically, the head of one of their unions submitted written testimony to the committee the same day, and in that he said, we'd love to take tests, the BOP won't give them. So nobody knows who's telling the truth on that one, but what not have staff getting tested. What I see is more troubling is we are not seeing the staff take vaccines. Let's talk a little about the vaccines. You remember that the BOP announced in December that they were going to vaccinate the staff first. And when they were done vaccinating the staff, they were going to start vaccinating inmates. Well, the numbers have been all over the map since then. But what they have done is delivered vaccine to, I think, according to their website, they're up to about 75% of the institutions so far. And here, I'm winding back up to the numbers. And staff has been turning it down at a rate of about 2 to 1. Right now, the percentage of the staff that has been inoculated is 34%. Now, what happens is
I'm even hearing real quick while you're on that, I'm even hearing from a lot of my clients, and not even just clients, but people on my subscriber list that are in the BOP, that staff is walking around not even wearing a mask. That many of the staff are refusing to wear a mask in within the prison, where the inmates are kind of being forced to wear it, and they're not being given clean masks on a regular basis. They're kind of, here, wash your mask and keep reusing it.
I have heard all those reports. The report I like the best I got from a guy at Petersburg today who said the staff came in and started tearing down the posters that are all over the unit telling people how to protect themselves against COVID. And one of the inmates asked the staffer, why are you taking those down? And he said, we are so over COVID, I'm sick of COVID. And I thought, oh, well, it makes sense. The BOP says you're recovered. When the BOP says you're recovered, why can't the BOP just say the pandemic's over because it wants it to be? But what we have right now is out of 36,000 staffers of the BOP, we got about 12,500 who have been vaccinated. Well, that's troubling that they're talking herd immunity is 75 to 85%, and we have 33% of the staff with shots in the arm. Because they have, once they thaw the stuff for the staff, they have to use it up. They've managed to inoculate 10,000 inmates. But that comes to like 6.8%, 6.9% of all inmates have been inoculated. So nobody really, no one knows how fast it's going and when all this other vaccine is going to be out there.
And a lot of them are thinking it's going to happen fast because there's basically a subscriber list going around the prison where it's, would you like to be put on a list to be given the vaccine? But there's no anticipated date of when that actually is going to happen.
Part of it is the BOP doesn't know when it's going to get the next tranche of vaccine. The BOP, we'll get down to that slide.
You want to go to the slide?
Let's talk about death. Go back and talk about deaths real fast.
Okay.
The number of inmate deaths have leveled out, and that's a number the BOP can't really fudge. You will see, though, in the death chart, this little blip up in February. That's because the numbers I've used here have been the BOP's numbers as well as federal prisoners in private prisons. One day in early February, suddenly the number of inmates who died in private prisons dropped by 3. 3 of them came back to life. I thought, well, Lent's coming up and then Easter. I suppose resurrection's in vogue, but I think I said in my blog that it was an Easter miracle performed by a statistician. Somehow 3 inmates were declared undead. So you see the blip, but we're leveled off at about 236 deaths right now. Problem is we've got Anthony Fauci and some of the other people up high in the COVID structure saying that with the variants coming and with the relaxation, everyone's relaxing. I mean, here in Ohio, the governor just said, yeah, we can have sports events. We can have all sorts of stuff. And I know things are going crazy down in Florida on the beaches. Everyone's relaxing. The variants are still out there. And we have something like, 20 million people inoculated in the country? It's not a big number. So they're the head of University of Minnesota's Department of Virology said a week ago, told CBS that he expects the worst of it to happen in the next, it'll be 13 weeks now, that we're going to see another spike. And that is important. Can you jump down to the last slide, Dan? Sorry, these are out of order.
It's okay. The last one.
Very last one. There you go. This represents what happens when there's nothing good to stream on the weekends. So I sit there with my data. It occurred to me while I was walking my dog that it would be interesting to overlay BOP cases and staff cases with the national cases to see how they match. And you'll see they match pretty well. The first national peak last April and the BOP staff peak, actually it was about May 1, matched perfectly, and the inmate lagged by about 2 weeks. There was another spike in late July, and you'll see that the inmates spiked then too. What's curious is the staff didn't spike. It increased and just kept going. And you can see the blue line, the staff line just keeps going on up. And we get to November and it really gets bad. National spiked, inmates spiked, and the staff finally spiked and fell off a bit. But what this suggests to me is if we have another national spike, we're going to see another BOP spike as well. And when that happens, then our job in the meantime, if we're working on compassionate release, is explaining to the courts that when it comes to COVID, the fat lady has not yet sung.
Do you think it has a lot to do with they're trying to give the illusion of things are going back to normal, so people kind of feel the illusion of some sort of a fake continuance of life where we're not just locked down and opening up jobs, or it's like their feet are kind of to the flame. If they keep the economy shut down the way they probably need to, the government's going to be dealing out so much money. I mean, where does this thing stop? How do they actually get it under control?
That's a good question. I wouldn't mind being in Joe Biden's position, chiefly because he has a cool airplane to fly around in. But other than that, I wouldn't want the job. It's a tough balancing act to balance, economic recovery and this COVID thing. I got to hand it to him. He's getting the vaccines are being rolled. Proof of that'll be in the next few weeks, and we'll see how fast the BOP gets its vaccines and gets them into inmate arms. But until that happens, I think that we still have a fairly potent argument. Part of our problem in this whole thing, and if you back up one slide, it'll make my point, Dan, is, yep, there you go. The BOP numbers make no sense. Back in February 22nd, when I made this slide, BOP said that they had, on one page, they had administered 52,100 doses. If you went to the next page that had a detailed list of all the institutions, it only came up to 19,000 doses. I didn't know where all the missing doses were. And in the week following, they went to 55,000 administered. The next day, it dropped to 50,000. So 5,000 doses got pulled out of arms someplace. And then the next day up to 58. It's the numbers make no sense. And the only guy I could think of was Chico Marx. Who you got to believe?
And there's really not a whole lot of people that are not only are they not monitoring the numbers, they're not monitoring the numbers on an ongoing basis. They might check it from time to time and not even realize the odd discrepancy that bounces around.
Yeah. And so no one knows for sure. I've talked to a few guys who've gotten it, a few guys who called me up and asked, should I get this or not? More than one guy's asked me to email him information about the vaccines because no one's telling the inmates anything on which one you should take, whether it's good, whether it's bad, what allergies. And one guy turned it down because he had low autoimmune. And he asked me, was that the right thing to do? I said, well, what'd they say? He said, oh, they didn't say anything. So it's,
and that's a question we get a lot from, clients that are hiring us to help them preparing their compassionate release motion. Some of them are getting offered to be put on a list. And, their question is, should I take the vaccine if it's offered to me, or should I deny it, with the question in mind of how is this going to affect my ability to be given compassionate release? So how would you break that down in layman's term for somebody that's like, man, am I going to pay this money to try to get compassionate release, get the prison? Then they're going to give me the shot. And the judge is going to say, well, you've gotten the shot. So now you no longer qualify, or you don't need it. So just, go back to your cell.
Boy, that's a $64 question too. I have read cases where the government has argued that compassionate release ought to be denied because the vaccine's coming. But the courts have rejected it because they said, you can't tell us when it's coming. You can't tell us when it's going to get there and when he's going to get it in his arm. And because you can't do that, we can't credit the BOP. I have seen cases where the inmate has gotten the shot and the judge has denied compassionate release because the judge says the risk of COVID just fell dramatically for this inmate. I have not yet seen a case where an inmate has asked for it and been denied. What it would happen is that would be in the medical records. The government will get those records. I've told a few guys who are past where the government's already answered and they're waiting for a decision. They're worried. What if I take it now? I said, well, let's be blunt. If you take it now, the BOP is not going to think to tattle to you on the government. If the government doesn't know, the government's not going to supplement its reply. You might have the best of both worlds. You don't know. And I've had a few who said, well, I just got the shot. Should I supplement my reply to tell the judge I got the shot? To which I say, and which Boy Scout troop do you belong to?
Honesty is the foundation, Tom.
Yes, it is. Would never.
But also, we're seeing like I saw on, I forgot who it was, if it was Fauci or just some other local doctor rambling on TV the other day, talking about individuals that had COVID and tested positive for the antibody, which I tested positive for the antibody. And they're saying we should still get the shot if possible because different strands are going to come out. So there's no real, well, first off, there's no evidence that this shot is going to prevent you from getting COVID in the future. It's just going to immune you from the current strand of it, correct? So if something else spikes out of this, which they've already said, there's been a couple of pop-ups behind this of different workarounds of this strand. Wouldn't that be a valid argument to make if a judge were to try to deny somebody for already having the shot?
Oh yeah, there's no question about it. But the problem is that it gets to a lot of moving parts, and the government just comes in and says, this guy got Pfizer, and Pfizer's 94.5% effective. And the busy judge, who is no physician, is going to look and say, oh, well, 94.5%, that looks pretty good. But that is true. We don't know what it's going to do on a lot of variants. We had 3 overseas variants, UK, Brazil, and South Africa. Now they've identified, I think, 7 variants in New York City. So, yeah, and I'm all for made in America. I'm sure that our variants are probably better than those foreign variants. But
in New York City, we're talking about a state that has been strictly locked down. You would think those variants would have grew up in Florida, where you wouldn't even know. If you came out to where I live in South Florida, Palm Beach County area on a Friday and Saturday night, and you went down any strip, whether it's Delray, West Palm Beach, the beach, you would never even know COVID was a thing. There's heads everywhere, alcohol everywhere, and probably not a mask in sight, even though there is a mask ordinance. It is, to use the word enforced would be taking it a stretch. It's recommended, but nobody follows it. The cops aren't enforcing it. So I think it's inevitable to see these variances pop up all over the place.
Yeah, and I think we'll see a spike. I think what will convince the courts will be if we have a spike over the next few weeks, the next actually 2 months. And you can argue with the variants, you got a problem. We don't know when all those shots are going to be in the arms. And I'm reading now that it may be a thing for us in the future. We're like a flu shot. We're going to have to get a booster every year. It's hard to say. But to be sure, we're on the backside of this thing. But I tell people who want compassionate releases that there's still a case to be made. If you've got the shot in your arm, I think you're wasting your time. But if you haven't gotten the shot, you want to get it in and get it in quickly and get the government's response on file quickly, because you may get the shot next week, you may get the shot in 2 months. But I think we'll see more inmate illness, and we'll see the deaths start to move up again.
So that's the direction we're going.
Yeah. Now, one of the something I noticed last week in the numbers, and I'll have to see what they do this week, is the number of shots administered.
Is this on the BOP's website?
Yes, it is. The problem is the BOP doesn't archive anything. You can go today and look to see that they've administered like 58,250 doses. But unless you happen to love to play with Excel, which I do.
Where are we going here, Tom, to see this?
Just crank down. Keep going. Little more. Yeah, keep going. Oh, wait, you're not on the COVID page. I'm sorry. Go back up and view our COVID statistics and related resources. Yeah, click on that. Now, if you go down, you get all their happy talk. And then you get there. Okay, 58,130 as of Friday. What's interesting is that number had been going up every day, except for that one day when it went from like 55,000 down to 50 and then back up again. It stalled last Wednesday. And I'm thinking that it may be that they have now used up their total first tranche allotment. Now, they did explain that they could administer more doses than they distributed because they were able to suck some extra vaccine out of each bottle. Now, if you go below that where it says learn about vaccinations and view individual facility stats, if you click on that, then now we get the good data.
Okay.
This is the stuff I've been saving every day. And when I told you how many staff had been inoculated, how many inmates, it's because every day I translate all this to Excel and then keep the numbers so I can compare to the previous days.
So real quick, while you're going through this, to your understanding or knowledge, have there been any prisons that were given the shots, that ordered shots for the inmates, or is every single inmate that has been given a shot basically a shot that a staff member turned down? It was just extra in the stockpile.
To the best of my understanding, and I followed it closely, every facility was giving extra shots or shots left over to inmates. There has not been, the second tranche hasn't been distributed yet.
So there's been no shots distributed to a prison with the mindset of these shots are also for inmates. It was for the amount of staff. And then once those staff turned it down because of the shelf life, they then gave it to the inmate instead of throwing it in the garbage.
Yeah. Hey, it happens.
Nice.
I had something like 45 minutes notice. I was getting my Pfizer shot because they were giving it to teachers and they had extra and had to put it in arms. And fortunately, my wife knew someone who knew someone. We got a phone call to get over there, and we did and got our shot. But that is kind of what's happening to the inmates, except they were nicer to us than the shot givers would be to the inmates. But other than that, it was the same thing. Now, go back up, look at, and not quite so far there, stop. For example, at Devon's, they used it all up on staff. So nobody got it.
Where? Devon's? Where do you see that?
Devon's FMC. Look down the list there. 302 staff got it, 0 inmates.
Are you looking at my list or your own list?
I'm looking at the list you've got up on the screen.
Oh, Devon's. Geez, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, right there. Now, is this breaking down by, okay, so for example, you got Coleman right here, Coleman FCC. Is this incorporating the camp, the low, the medium, and the 2 penitentiaries, or is this?
If it says FCC, it is, because that's Federal Correctional Complex. That's
so just to give you guys an idea, because a lot of people don't know, but Coleman, for example, just the low security alone has close to 3,000 inmates at one of their security levels, and the medium is similar. The camp has like 500, and I'm not sure the 2 penitentiaries combined. So we're talking probably 8,000 inmates easy in this entire prison, and 562 inmates have received it, which you're looking at these numbers and you're going, well, wow, way less staff has received it versus the inmates. It's because the inmate to staff ratio is so off kilter there that there's probably not that many staff when you really round them all up, because they bounce around from prison to prison. So 8,000 out of 8,000 inmates, 560 some odd inmates have gotten shots. That's a very, very small number compared to who actually needs it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Coleman numbers, and they've got a fair number of people. They got 4 facilities, and they're close to like 1,200 per facility. So they're going to need an awful lot of shots by the time this thing's done.
Yeah.
What I said, they're bragging. We got 10,000 inmates inoculated.
And that doesn't even cover one prison. For you put Coleman in that group, and that's one prison's inmate capacity. And that is the whole prison has been given that many shots together. So it's got a long way to go. That's why when I'm seeing these emails coming in going, I'm on the list for the shot, it's like you're on a list saying that you're willing to take it. But by the time that thing actually makes it to your arm or your butt, wherever they're sticking it, this may be, 4, 5, 6 months or longer down the road by the time it's actual prophecy has proclaimed itself.
Good news, Dan, it's the arm.
It's the arm.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Is that good news? Depends on the inmate. Hey.
Okay, moving on. Talk a bit about the stimulus. You know that last year passed the HEROES Act, which was its $3 trillion stimulus proposal that the Senate didn't bite on. It included a lot of great stuff for inmates, such as fixing elderly offender home detention so you could really go after you've done like 56% of your sentence, lowering the age to 50, and pretty much a mandate that the BOP send people on home confinement and that judges grant compassionate release. It was a wonderful bill. Didn't go anywhere. Durbin and Grassley. Let's go to the odd couple here, would you?
Yep. Give me 1 second. I'll reload it.
We're going to show you our illustrations. My illustration department, consisting of me, worked long and hard about this. or on this.
Yeah,
But Durbin and Grassley together proposed the Safer Detention Act. And the Safer Detention Act fixes elderly offender to let people go home when they've done 2/3 of their 85% sentence instead of 2/3 of their entire sentence. It fixes compassionate release to specify that COVID and a morbidity is all you need, because a lot of judges have turned them down saying, well, you haven't proved the BOP can't take care of you. It's tough proving a negative, although proving the BOP is not going to take care of you ought to be easy.
Right.
But it's a great bill. Of course, what I like about the odd couple here is Durbin is now chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Chuck is the ranking Republican. Now, a year ago this time, Chuck was running it and Durbin was the ranking minority member. But these two guys are from different sides of the aisle, but they have the same philosophy on criminal justice reform. And when the chairman of the Judiciary Committee and the ranking minority member write a bill together and send it to committee, you can be sure it's going to get a hearing, and get a hearing pretty quickly. I had kind of hoped we would see it in the stimulus package. I was disappointed. A week ago, the stimulus text came out, the early text, and it wasn't included. Nancy Pelosi's version that the House passed early Saturday morning does not include. We got money coming, and by the way, the inmates are still eligible for the $1,400 a piece. They didn't.
A lot of them are having a big problem getting their money. I've got so many emails of, we filled out the forms, we've done everything that you guys said to do, and we're still not. Almost like they're upset at me, like I'm the one writing the check. I've gotten direct messages saying we did what you said, and they won't give it to me. To be clear, I have no stake in how you get your money. We're just trying to help you guys navigate this crazy maze with what you're supposed to do, but it's out of our hands to when they stroke the check to you.
Yeah, I finally put something in the newsletter last week because so many people had asked about it. What happens, the IRS just got overwhelmed, and the IRS has said to everybody, inmate and non-inmate, that, hey, if you were entitled to some of that money and you didn't get it, you need to file a 2020 tax return. And on it, there's language about the recovery credit. And you put in what you got. And they said, but if you got some of it, not all. Actually, it was a week ago. But I think I wrote a blog piece about it too.
You see it on any of these?
I have to go ask my.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Anyway, it's there.
Guys, make sure you go to, I'll make sure there's a link in the description, but if you guys want to go see the writings and the workups that Tom has done, and all of every article he creates goes to a list of close to 10,000 inmates right now, Tom?
No, I'm since the BOP
right.
This last fall, it's more like 5,000, but it keeps climbing. So,
but if you go to Tom's website, Lisa Legal, if you actually just go Google Lisa Legal Info, it will come right up, but it's lisa-legalinfo.com. And if you want to add your inmate, there's a spot on here where it shows what information to have the inmate do to request Tom. It's the same way they would add you to Core Links. It's just them using Tom's information, which is on your website, correct, Tom?
Yeah, and here you go. February 22nd, just roll down to the February 22nd post. And what I did in there is I put a link to something I'm not sure. Oh, that goes right to IRS telling you how. Yeah, there you go. Going down just a little more. You keep going. Yep, you're almost there. You're getting warm. There you go. How to get stimulus payments, old and new. Just click on that. It'll take you to the IRS page. And the IRS has said if you didn't get any payment or got less than the full amount, just got to file a tax return. So,
guys, I just dropped a link to this part of the page. You'll just scroll down to where it says how to get a stimulus payment, old and new. Use the link that I just posted in the live chat, and I'll make sure to add this to the description later. So if somebody wants to have their family add you, Tom, they just go to the Contact Us tab. And do we have all of your contact information right here?
Yep. You can Yeah, you can go ahead and add.
Here's your email on here, Tom.
Oh, I thought I had. Yeah,
You got an actual link for Oaks of Justice. That is amazing.
Yeah, I got too many questions about Oaks of Justice. If you go right to the bottom of that comment page, keep going. Yeah, there you go. You can send me.
Okay.
Send me.
So on the comment here, I'll add this to the group as well, so you guys have this. If you want Tom's information to add a loved one, just send Tom a quick message with what does my loved one need to do to add me on your weekly newsletter, and Tom will respond from you filling out this nice comment section right here.
Yeah, I'll be glad to answer. You can get the newsletter every Sunday night just by sending me your email, and I'll put you on the list. You get to see exactly what the inmates see, and
you should be accepting donations or something, Tom, to help, because I know you don't get paid to do this. You do this just because it's a nice thing to do. You should have a donation thing on here where if people want to help contribute to the cause.
Well, the risk is that if I get enough donations, I'll buy myself a Netflix subscription. Then I'll not want to write it anymore.
Well, that's honesty.
Yeah, but yeah. Me, and if you think I'm not as funny as I think I am, then my wife thinks that too.
Well, you're still married, so you're doing something right, Tom.
It's only because she tells me I'm out of warranty.
Out of warranty.
Yeah. So
so what's the summary of this? The summary for people right now are thinking, is it too late to try for compassionate release if I have issues, health issues that would be considered risky for me to be in prison? What do you think? Is it they should still be trying for this with honest expectations, or the door is closed on their face?
I don't think it's closed. And I feel even better about it than I did a week ago. I just picked up a study just a few hours ago, a Tufts University study that links the morbidities that judges like to run down. Judges like to say, hypertension is no big deal. Turns out something like 29% of hospitalizations are from people with hypertension and COVID. And obesity is like number one with a bullet for causing the hospitalizations. And I mean, the data are getting better all the time.
Now, how important is, because we can't assume that the judges know what's risky and what's not risky. They're basically going off the argument that's made in the motion, and then they're going to review the counter argument in the government's objection. So we've looked at some motions here recently. We've had some individuals that had done their own, or they hired, very expensive attorneys to prepare them for them, and finding us after the fact and wanting us to at least review them and kind of give them some feedback was whether or not it was done right or wrong. And, we've seen a few that were pretty decent, but you were always able to look at these and go, this is probably where it should have gone a little deeper on here. Because when you're putting in your, if you've got a ton of medical records and supporting documentation, it really does need to be spelled out. You can't assume that just because you show somebody that you have asthma, that the judge is going to look at them and go, he has asthma, I'm going to give it to him. How important is the details? Is this where they say the details are within whatever that saying is?
Oh, the devil's in the details.
Devil's in the details. There we go.
I think so, but I also think that you need to be able to wrap it up in an argument that focuses on what the BOP has done. I have noticed in reading more of these government oppositions than I care to count, probably 40 or 50. After a while, things popped up and I thought, I've read this before. And I discovered that U.S. attorneys around the country were apparently grabbing all this stuff off the cloud and using the same arguments. There'll be a section about the BOP's robust response to COVID-19. And I see the Criminal Justice Cafe, huge win. Yes, they did have a huge win in Danbury.
Criminal Justice Cafe. What a cool little name. I've never heard of that before. Criminal Justice Cafe. I'd love to know more information. about what
Coffee,
you have going
donuts,
on.
and due
That's what I
process.
imagine. I imagine coffee.
Yeah.
The criminals sitting around having coffee, or at least ex-criminals.
Yes. Are we all well? Yeah. And this is what I like to point to that situation in Danbury. The BOP cut a deal. For people who don't like plea agreements, the BOP essentially signed a plea agreement with the plaintiffs last summer and said, we promise we'll expedite this home confinement business in the CARES Act. And within a few months, the plaintiffs are back in court asking for a contempt showing because the BOP had completely dropped the ball, and the court agreed with them. BOP promised to do something and didn't do it. If you follow the BOP, that should come as no surprise. But podcasts.
Send me your link and I'll drop a link to your podcast.
Yeah.
Real quick question, since I have this person in front of us right now, Tom, do you mostly focus on women? Because I noticed you had mentioned Danbury. The reason I ask is we have a new Facebook group that I'd like to promote real quick since it's my YouTube channel. It's Federal Prison Wives and Family Members. It's more targeted towards women that are either going to prison or have been to prison, husbands that are supporting wives in prison. It can even be for men that are going to prison. But the difference between our group and many of the other support groups that are out there is I don't want to turn this group into another group where it's just a bunch of people arguing about, visitation and the phones are off and the mistreatment. I get it. That's plenty of out there, but we're trying to, this is like a positive support group. What are you doing to get through your time? How are you making your adjustments with communication? What new habits have you created? Some struggles that you've dealt with that you can lend support to others. So if anybody wants to come take a look at the Facebook group, it's a free group. Here's a link. Come on over. Group is growing. We've got 20 members in there. We spawned it about a week and a half ago. So we'd love to get you guys' support in there. But criminal justice, I would love to hear some information about what you got going on because that's really cool. Yeah.
Your question was, do I focus on women? I don't dare say that without getting my wife on me. But no, I actually... I suppose probably the percentages of people I work on are about the same as the BOP, 91.9, I'm pretty sure. But I have lately talked to a lot of women at FMC Carswell, the medical center for women. And if you didn't follow what happened in Texas with the bad weather and the electrical failures and all.
Oh, yeah.
I had a piece in this week's newsletter. I'm not even going to describe. It was so bad, but my heart went out to them, and I thought I have heard very few tales of privation from the men's prisons that rival this. But working with people down there, women at Wasika, but more men than women, because face it, those are the percentages.
Yeah, and it's definitely. I used to get the question a lot. Is there a difference between men and women going to prison? And obviously, there's a massive similarity. You're both going to prison. You're going to be away from your family. But I would say there's a very different mental. There's many different mental obstacles that you're going to have to overcome. Especially you start hearing, and they're not really horror stories. You're hearing how a lot of the male guards are kind of predatoring the female inmates. And if you're getting ready to go to prison as a female, I don't want to scare you out of your boots. I don't mean they're going to attack you and rape you necessarily, but there are a lot of advancements. There's a lot of hidden agenda things where maybe they'll offer you some makeup and very inappropriate actions, probably getting eyeballed. So I imagine that's a whole nother level of issues that a female is dealing with while going into the prison system, and having a safe space where you can talk about this without, creating extra grief and getting dealt with differently in the prison system. We want to kind of create that over here with what we do. So feel free to let us know what your concerns are.
Okay. I guess what I would say about, I'm looking at the numbers. We're talking, BOP is going to say we're way down on numbers, but their numbers were running 1,500 sick inmates last late June through August and early September. So, the compassionate releases were being granted then. The big difference now is we've got a vaccine on the horizon. But until the BOP can say when it's going to be delivered and when it's going to be put in arms, we've got some precedent from courts saying they're not going to listen to it. So I would say, though, that what was that, Shakespeare, I believe, that which you would do promptly.
Yeah. So, I mean, the door is open. We're still seeing, I'm seeing a lot of positive motions that are still getting through the door. Yes, the government is going to start to try to use their excuses and objections. But if you have somebody that specializes in what's happening, such as Tom, it's going to be preemptive. We already know what type of templated boilerplate objection they're going to come up with. So kind of premeditating what they're going to do and getting it ready to file the minute they do that is really, because you don't have a lot of time. Once you file the motion, the government will do their objection, and sometimes you only got a few days to fire back. So you've got some attorney that's super busy or doesn't really do these all the time. You either may not get it filed in time, or it might be very under par from what you need. So make sure you're dealing with somebody that knows what they're doing.
And one thing I would mention on this is that, the standard for compassionate release is first you've got to show that you have an extraordinary and compelling reason for it. And that has been defined as COVID at your facility and your special vulnerability to it. But then you've got to show that the sentencing factors of 3553, the sentencing statute, suggests that release is appropriate. And that's where most guys are tripping. Everyone loves to talk about extraordinary and compelling. And I've got a few guys who have lost on 3553 and come back and say, well, we need to go back in and show him that my diabetes is worse or I weigh more or something like that. And I say, no, you don't get it. You established that you have extraordinary and compelling. You've got to convince the judge that your release is not going to offend the sentencing factors. And the tough one is when you're arguing that you haven't done much time and you should be let out. I think it's doable. I have an approach that I think makes a compelling showing, but these things aren't dunkers. I think there
are individuals out there that will tell you it's a slam dunk for those 16 digits on your credit card number. They'll tell you exactly what you want to hear, sell you the pie in the sky. And Tom and I have lost numerous clients to the overpromising from some of these deceitful competitors. That's because we all want to hear what we want to hear and believe, that this is going to be an easy deal. Many times that will end up costing you tenfold, because once you realize it's not going to be that easy, or you're not, we had somebody spend, I forgot what they spent. It was 10 grand ish for a motion that when it was given to the attorney to file, the attorney refused to file it because it was so poorly written that the attorney was terrified to put his name on it. And this was from a very prominent consultant. And Tom was able to review this and actually had to get on the phone and talk to the attorney, because the attorney was very wary of the client, repeating this behavior with somebody else and just getting taken advantage of over and over again. And this guy actually has a good shot at compassionate release. Sentencing factors, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, Tom. Most of his co-defendants were sentenced to home confinement. He was one of the only guys sentenced to prison time, so he's got great factors. Just a mess of paperwork that was filed earlier on. Yeah.
So that's pretty much the topic. I
stole Tom's thoughts there.
Oh no, that's okay. That's pretty much the topic. I'm not sure. Oh, I know. Well, I suppose we can mention the other factor looming out there: criminal justice. Everybody is asking me, well, when are mandatory minimums going to go away? When's Biden going to do this? When's Biden going to do that? How fast will criminal justice pass? When is it going to be introduced? What is the timeline? I thought, boy, if I could tell you the timeline of Congress, I wouldn't be in this business. But we don't know. Criminal justice takes a long time. Yeah. And it is unlikely that a lot of small bills will be going through Congress. I think it's going to be one big package. And big packages take time. Remember that the First Step Act started as a Sentence Reform and Corrections Act in October of the year before it finally passed. In October 17, they were starting to roll it out, and it went through the House and finally passed the House the end of, I want to say May or something like that, of 18, and just got through the Senate in a very different form in December of 18, right before Congress ended. So,
and it's still not in complete effect. It's still being kind of figured out with certain parts of it when it comes to, earned time credits and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, sure. And, it was enacted in December of 2018, and the BOP is telling inmates with a straight face that it hasn't been enacted yet. It won't be enacted until January 15, 2022. It's pure BOP saying it's enacted when we say it's enacted. And I read a decision in New Jersey where the judge said something to the effect of, to its credit, the government the BOP told the inmate that when it denied his administrative remedies. To its credit, the government did not make that argument in front of this court. I mean, some things are they smell too bad for the government to even use.
Yep. Well, there we go. I think we covered some of the basics. And again, the main focus today was with all the people that are asking questions, it's not too late to try for compassionate release if you have some compelling arguments. Best thing you can do is there's a link in the description of the video for a consultation. You'll fill out some basic info. Calendar will pop up. You'll put yourself on the calendar, and Tom and I will hop on a call with you, or just myself or just Tom. But you want to make sure before you move forward with a compassionate release, you really want to go through this interview process with us to make sure that it's plausible at all for you, and must go into this realizing that there's going to be a cost associated without any guarantees. And like Tom said, it's not a slam dunk. So you want to look at all the factors, and sometimes you may not even think there's that many reasons you have. And then after talking to Tom, there might be 3 or 4 more reasons when it starts talking about your family situation, kids, wives, husbands, some things aside from what you were even considering. So it's well worth the call. It could be a 20-minute call that ends up saving you quite a bit of mind hunting anger. Tom, anything you want to leave people with before we roll out of here?
Yeah, something that had occurred to me when Grassley and Durbin introduced the Safer Detention Act, that these guys are representing pretty much the thought on both sides of the aisle in Congress, and they see the continued release of inmates because of COVID as a compelling issue, which is why they're pushing this legislation. And I'm thinking that pretty much is evidence that this thing hasn't gone away. And it has not gone away yet. And it's perception. If Congress is saying it hasn't gone away and we need to emphasize the release, you might as well take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So
I agree. All right, guys, there you have it. Another completed video with Tom Root talking on the topics of COVID-19, compassionate release, and a little bit of prison reform in there. What's coming, what we have to look forward to. Guys, if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Please come check out our Facebook group for the female supportive things on organizing and communities method, helping people, keeping it positive. This is hard on everybody. You've got sort of small children being left behind, and hearing somebody else's struggles and what they did to overcome could really help somebody shave a lot of time from making millions of mistakes that could be avoided. I'm RDAP Dan, Federal Prison Time Consulting, people helping people, communities method, one day at a time. See you guys in a couple days. Appreciate it, everybody.